Okay, so in your notebooks, you're on page 2. I've got page 2 pulled up here. So as we take notes together, I will put the notes on the board. If you can't see them, just let me know and I'll try to write it bigger. You have a little bit more space than I do. So in the top left corner, it asks, in your own words, define POV. When we see POV like that, it just means point of view. So who can tell me what point of view is? Yes, Jaden. Good. Perfect answer. Jaden said the perspective from which the story is told. Perspective from which the story is told. So, we are going to start with reading number 1 of the book Thief. So once you've written that note down, I want you to turn to page 3. Actually, page 1. There's not a page number. It just says Prologue. So once you finish that note, get to the Prologue. Now, the book is divided into 10 sections, and each section, each part, starts with a page like this. You know how they show movie trailers before they actually show the movie? I want you to think of these pages as the movie trailer for that part. So this says, the prologue, a mountain range of rubble, in which our narrator introduces himself, the colors, the book thief. And so this is like an overview of the prologue. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know that it's going to feature the narrator, colors, and the book thief. So as we read, our question is going to be, who is narrating the book thief? Now, if you've read it before or you've seen the movie, you probably already know, but I don't want you to spoil it for us yet. We're trying to figure it out with the evidence that we have. So as I read this section, I want you to be looking for evidence from the prologue as to who you think the narrator is. So we don't know who it is right now. We haven't started the book. You're looking for 3 quotes to copy into these boxes that you think are a clue as to who the narrator is. And then you're going to write your explanation of what that quote tells you in the explanation box. So we'll read it together and we're going to go through it together so you'll have a chance to listen and to write it down. So flip to the next page. Now, the annoying thing about this book is that it doesn't have chapter numbers. It would be easier if it had chapter numbers, but it does have chapter titles. So this chapter is titled Death and Chocolate. First the colors, then the humans. That's how I usually see things. Or at least, that's how I try. Here is a small fact. You are going to die. Now, we're going to pause there. Not a very cheery way to start a book, but I promise you it gets better. Not soon. Not soon. Now, in this little box, it said, what point of view is the book thief? We don't know who the narrator is yet, but you can tell me, based on what we've read, is this first, second, or third? Good. A couple people said it. It is first person. So we're going to write that in the box. And we know that the point of view is first person because he uses the word I. He says, that's how I see things. So we've met the narrator. Yes, Nicholas?
I used to play a game called Jeff June, and before they made Chapman, guess what one person was reading?
What?
He was reading the book thief out loud.
Really? Very interesting.
Well, he got kicked from the circle.
Oh, no. Well, now you've got the recordings that you can use if you need to. So we know that this is first person. How?
The first page
That's too bad. But we're going to get through more than that. Okay, so now we know we're listening to someone speaking. So now we're looking for 3 quotes that tell us who it is. We're going to continue. I am, in all truthfulness, attempting to be cheerful about this whole topic. though most people find themselves hindered in believing me. No matter my protestations, please trust me. I most definitely can be cheerful. I can be amiable, agreeable, affable, and that's only the A's. Just don't ask me to be nice. Nice has nothing to do with me. Okay, that's going to be the first quote that I write down because that seems to be pretty important about this narrator. So in the box, I'm going to say, nice has nothing to do with me. Now somebody explain that quote for me. What does it tell us about the narrator?
He's not
He's not
nice.
He's not nice. And I'm going to put a question mark because at this point, I'm a little concerned. I don't want to read 550 pages about someone who is not a nice person. But he says, I can be amiable. Amiable means friendly. I can be agreeable. I can be affable. Affable means like kind. But he says, I am not nice. So now we've got this clue, but we're not really sure what it means. Now we continue. Reaction to the aforementioned, that means before, aforementioned fact. Does this worry you? I urge you, don't be afraid. I'm nothing if not fair. Okay, so we're at the top of page 4. Of course, an introduction, a beginning. Where are my manners? I could introduce myself properly, but it's not really necessary. You will know me well enough and soon enough, depending on a diverse range of variables. It suffices to say that at some point in time, I will be standing over you as genially as possible. Your soul will be in my arms. A color will be perched on my shoulder. I will carry you gently away. At that moment, you will be lying there. I rarely find people standing up. You will be caked in your own body. There might be a discovery. A scream will dribble down the air. The only sound I'll hear after that will be my own breathing and the sound of the smell of my footsteps. The question is, what color will everything be at that moment when I come for you? What will the sky be saying? Personally, I like a chocolate-colored sky. Dark, dark chocolate. People say that it suits me. A billion or so flavors, none of them quite the same, and a sky to slowly suck on. It takes the edge off the stress. It helps me relax. Okay, so in these paragraphs, he is describing what he does. It's like he's describing his job. But what does he say he does? Anybody catch it? Okay, so Will said, it sounds like he kills people. He talks about carrying people. He talks about holding their soul. Like, those are definitely clues. So what I'm going to write in my second box is this sentence where he says, I will carry you gently away. I'm going to try to write small so it fits. So he says, I will carry you gently away. What's our explanation? What does that tell us about him? What, Will? Will says, I don't know. How many of you are confused? I was confused. When I first read this book, I was like, what the heck is going on? Who is this person? Because what it seems to be saying here and in that paragraph, it seems like he carries away dead people. Again, I'm going to put a question mark. That's a little concerning. So now I'm thinking maybe he's an undertaker. Maybe he's like a preacher. I'm not sure, but I've got 2 clues. Hmm?
I don't think a dark sky would suit.
True. A student pointed out that, I'm just repeating it, Jaden, so they can hear it on the video, because they probably couldn't hear you. A student said preachers probably wouldn't have, like, dark skies don't suit a preacher, which is a good point. So now we're thinking, okay, who is this person that works with souls? So we've got a lot of questions. Okay, we're going to continue. A small theory. People observe the colors of a day only at its beginnings and ends, but to me it's quite clear that a day merges through a multitude of shades and intonations, that means changes, with each passing moment. A single hour can consist of thousands of different colors. Waxy yellows, cloud spat blues, murky darknesses. In my line of work, I make it a point to notice them. As I've been alluding to, my one saving grace is distraction. It keeps me sane. It helps me cope, considering the length of time I've been performing this job. The trouble is, who could ever replace me? Who could step in while I take a break in your stock standard resort style vacation destination, whether it be tropical or of the ski trip variety? The answer, of course, is nobody, which has prompted me to make a conscious, deliberate decision to make distraction my vacation. Needless to say, I vacation in increments, in colors. Still, it's possible that you might be asking, why does he even need a vacation? What does he need distraction from? Which brings me to my next point. It is the leftover humans, the survivors. They're the ones I can't stand to look at, although on many occasions I still fail. I deliberately seek out the colors to keep my mind off of them, but now and then I witness the ones who are left behind, crumbling among the jigsaw puzzle of realization, despair, and surprise. They have punctured hearts. They have beaten lungs. Which in turn brings me to the subject I'm telling you about tonight, or today, or whatever the hour in color. It's the story of one of those perpetual survivors, an expert at being left behind. It's just a small story, really, about, among other things, a girl, some words, an accordionist, some fanatical Germans, a Jewish fistfighter, and quite a lot of thievery. I saw The Book Thief 3 times. So we finished chapter 1, and he's finally, whoever this narrator is, he's finally talking about our main character. We don't know who the book thief is yet, but we know the book is called The Book Thief, so this person must be very important. Now, we're still thinking about this question, who is the narrator? But I also want us to look at the second half of the page. In your own words, who can define symbol? What's a symbol?
A non-deserved sign.
It's like a sign. It's an object that represents something else, right? So we're going to say an object that represents something else. When we read The Interlopers, we said that when Ulrich offers George that drink of wine, that wine symbolizes friendship. So lots of things can be used as symbols. And if you look at the second note, it says that color symbolism, in The Book Thief, the author often uses color as a way to add symbolism. We see color symbolism in the world around us. If you see a green light, what does that green light mean? Go. So that green represents go, like a good thing. If you see a red light, what should you do?
Go.
Stop. Not go, Will. Will said go, but no, we're going to stop when we see a red light. Now, this is where it gets tricky. What if you see a yellow light?
Speed up.
Some people say go really, really fast, and some people say slow down. So we're used to colors being used as symbols. So as we read through these next couple chapters, couple sections, I want you to make a list of the colors the narrator uses and identify what they usually represent. So let's look at the first line of this chapter. Beside the railway line. First up is something white, of the blinding kind. Now, so what color are we going to put?
White.
Good, we're going to add white. That's our first color. Now, what does white usually represent? This is where it gets kind of tricky. What? Good, we could say hope, a glare. Often we see a white glare. You often hear the expression pure as snow. And so when we think of snow, we think of something white. Marissa, if you need to move, you can stand up. Marissa's over there like trying to dodge the computer and dodge me to see. So I'm going to add that phrase, pure as snow. Oh, I misspelled snow. That's not good.
That's no.
It's because we haven't had a snow day in so long. I've forgotten how to spell it.
No.
What, Jane?
They can get close a long time, it won't get a person years.
True. Okay,
Yeah, you know.
so we're going to continue. We're on page 5. We're going to see what he says about white. Page 6. I'm sorry. All right. If you can see, this is an older version of the book. You can see that the cover looks different than what most of y'all are having. The page numbers are, it's like a horrible font. It's very difficult to see. So when they reprinted it, which is what most of y'all have, they fixed it. So it's just like a normal font. They tried to make it cute. Horrible decision. You can't see it. Okay. So some of you think, most likely, thinking that white is not really a color and all of that tired sort of nonsense. Well, I'm here to tell you that it is. White is without question a color, and personally, I don't think you want to argue with me. A reassuring announcement. Please be calm despite that previous threat. I am all bluster. I am not violent. I am not malicious. I am a result. That's very curious. He's saying he is a result, but we still don't know what he is. Yes, it was white. It felt as though the whole globe was dressed in snow, like it had pulled it on the way you pull on a sweater. Next to the train line, footprints were sunk into their shins. Trees wore blankets of ice. As you might expect, someone had died. They couldn't just leave him on the ground. For now, it wasn't such a problem, but very soon, the track ahead would be cleared and the train would need to move on. There were 2 guards. There was one mother and her daughter, one corpse. The mother, the girl, and the corpse remained stubborn and silent. Well, what else do you want me to do? The guards were tall and short. The tall one always spoke first, though he was not in charge. He looked at the smaller, rounder one, the one with the juicy red face. Well, was the response, we can't just leave him like this, can we? The tall one was losing patience. Why not? And the smaller one near exploded. He looked up at the tall one's chin and cried, Spence do? Are you stupid? When you see these words that are in italics, they're italicized, those words are the German words. So since our setting is in Germany, they're going to pull some German phrases and expressions, and so that's why they're italicized. The abhorrence on his cheeks was growing thicker by the moment. His skin widened. Come on, he said, traipsing over the snow. We'll carry all 3 of them back on if we have to. We'll notify the next stop. As for me, I had already made the most elementary of mistakes. I can't explain to you the severity of my self-disappointment. Originally, I'd done everything right. I studied the blinding white snow sky, who stood at the window of the moving train. I practically inhaled it, but still I wavered. I buckled. I became interested in the girl. Curiosity got the better of me, and I resigned myself to stay as long as my schedule allowed, and I watched. 23 minutes later, I climbed out with them. A small soul was in my arms. Thank you, Ethan. I stood a little to the right. The dynamic train guard duo made their way back to the mother, the girl, and the small male corpse. I clearly remember that my breath was loud that day. I'm surprised the guards didn't notice me as they walked by. The world was sagging now, under the weight of all that snow. Perhaps 10 meters to my left, the pale, empty-stomached girl was standing, frost-stricken. Her mouth jittered, her cold arms were folded. Tears were frozen to the book thief's face. So now, we've met the book thief. She a boy or a girl? A girl. We don't know much about her, but we know that we're going to learn more about her because she's going to be our protagonist. Page 9. The Eclipse. Next is the signature black to show the poles of my versatility, if you like. It was the darkest moment before the dawn. So we got our second color. Now, what do we think of when we see black used as a color? What does it represent? Darkness. With white, we have black. So white is often used to represent light. Black might be used to represent darkness. Most people are afraid of the dark. So usually, sometimes, black is used to represent fear. An example of color symbolism that I was supposed to tell you and I forgot. What color are Disney villains always? They're like black and green and red. So we associate those colors with villains. Think about, like, if you know Loki from the Avengers, what color does he embody? Green. But what color is Superman? Red and blue. And what about Spider-Man? Red and blue. And what about Captain America? Red and blue. So that's a lot of color symbols in there. What? Probably because he's American made. Good point. Okay, so we're going to continue. This time, I had come for a man of perhaps 24 years of age. It was a beautiful thing in some ways. The plane was still coughing. Smoke was leaking from both its lungs. When it crashed, 3 deep gashes were made in the earth. Its wings were now sawn off arms. No more flapping, not for this metallic little bird. Some other facts. Sometimes I arrive too early. I rush, and some people cling on longer to life than expected. After a small collection of minutes, the smoke exhausted itself. There was nothing less to give. A boy arrived first with cluttered breath and what appeared to be a toolbox. With great trepidation, he approached the cockpit and watched the pilot, gauging if he was alive, at which point he still was. The book thief arrived perhaps 30 seconds later. Years had passed, but I recognized her. She was panting. From the toolbox, the boy took out, of all things, a teddy bear. He reached in through the torn windshield and placed it on the pilot's chest. The smiling bear sat huddled among the crowded wreckage of the man in the blood. A few minutes later, I took my chance. The time was right. I walked in, loosened his soul, and carried it gently away. All that was left was the body, the dwindling smell of smoke, and the smiling teddy bear. As the crowd arrived in full, things, of course, had changed. The horizon was beginning to charcoal. What was left of the blackness above was nothing now but a scribble, and disappearing fast. The man, in comparison, was the color of bone. Skeleton-colored skin, a ruffled uniform. His eyes were cold and brown, like coffee stains, and the last scrawl from above formed what, to me, appeared an odd yet familiar shape, a signature. The crowd did what crowds do. As I made my way through, each person stood and played with the quietness of it. It was a small concoction of disjointed hand movements, muffled sentences, and mute, self-conscious turns. When I glanced back at the plane, the pilot's open mouth appeared to be smiling. A final dirty joke. Another human punchline. He remained shrouded in his uniform as the graying light arm wrestled the sky. As with many of the others, when I began my journey away, there seemed a quick shadow gone, a final moment of eclipse, the recognition of another soul gone. You see, to me, for just a moment, despite all of the colors that touch and grapple with what I see in this world, I will often catch an eclipse when a human dies. I've seen millions of them. I've seen more eclipses than I care to remember. Now I'm going to add one of those quotes to this table. Back to thinking about who our narrator is. He says, I will often catch an eclipse when a human dies. Now, 2 things that we're going to write down for our explanation. What is an eclipse? Do y'all remember when we had the eclipse a couple years ago? Good. So that was a solar eclipse. Good. We have solar eclipse and we have lunar eclipses. So a lunar eclipse is when the moon passes in front of the sun, and so it actually looks like you can't see the sun. It's very freaky. So for our narrator, he says, I often catch an eclipse when a human dies. What does that eclipse represent? Kind of like a gunshot. It's going to be death. So for him, whoever he is, that eclipse represents death. Now, this is the second thing that we're going to write down about this quote. It's really interesting that he says, I often catch an eclipse when a human dies. If you are human, as all of you seem to be so far, based on what I have known about you for a couple of weeks, do you refer to other humans as human? No. That makes it a little odd. So now I've got a question in my mind. Is the narrator human? If you can see that I've run out of room on these boxes, so if you need to kind of go out of the boxes or go down, you can. Because we already said in our last point that he carries away dead people, and we were like, what does that mean? But now, if I'm thinking maybe he's not human, parts of this, parts of what we already know, are starting to make more sense. But once you've got that written down, go ahead and turn to page 12. And we're going to finish with the last section of the prologue. The flag. The last time I saw her was red. So we've got our third color. We had white, we had black, and now we have red. What does red normally represent?
Anger.
Anger, good. Danger. We associate the color red with blood, which is usually a bad thing. If you're looking at a lot of blood, it's not good. Now, the last thing that I want you to see is thinking about the trailer we watched yesterday. Yes, Nicholas?
All three of the colors appear on the Nazi.
Perfect. Exactly what I wanted you to see. Nicholas said all three of these appear on the Nazi flag. I know. There's lots of layers. So, as the narrator is walking us through, Kevin just got it. Now, obviously, I'm not going to draw a swastika so that we can think about it. But I want us to. We saw those flags yesterday when we looked at the trailer.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Those colors could be anything.
Yes.
It can't just be a
Nazi flag.
They could. They could. As student pointed out, those colors could mean anything. And they definitely could. But we know about the setting. And so we've got another layer of symbolism.
Flag.
Are there ever coincidences in literature, Cody?
Their colors.
We'll see.
I mean, the name of this chapter is for flag, right?
Good connection, Jaden. We'll see. We'll see, Cody. We'll see. Okay, but we're going to continue. We've only got a couple of pages left. Y'all are doing great. The sky was like soup, boiling and stirring. In some places, it was burned. There were black crumbs and pepper streaked across the redness. Earlier, kids had been playing hopscotch there, on the street that looked like oil-stained pages. When I arrived, I could still hear the echoes, the feet tapping the road, the children voices laughing, and the smiles like salt but decaying fast. Then, bombs. This time, everything was too late. The sirens, the cuckoo shrieks in the radio, all too late. Within minutes, mounds of concrete and earth were stacked and piled. I've lost my place. The streets were ruptured veins. Blood streamed till it was dried on the road, and the bodies were stuck there like driftwood after the flood. They were glued down, every last one of them, a packet of souls. Was it fate? Misfortune? Is that what glued them down like that? Of course not. Let's not be stupid. It probably had more to do with the hurled bombs thrown down by humans hiding in the cloud. Yes, the sky was a devastating, home-cooked red. The small German town had been flung apart one more time. Snowflakes of ash fell so lovelily that you were tempted to stretch out your tongue and catch them, taste them. Only they would have scorched your lips. They would have cooked your mouth. Clearly, I see it. I was just about to leave when I found her kneeling there. A mountain range of rubble was written, designed, erected around her. She was clutching at a book. Apart from everything else, the book thief wanted desperately to go back to the basement to write or to read through her story one last time. In hindsight, I see it so obviously on her face. She was dying for it, the safety of it, the home of it, but she could not move. Also, the basement didn't even exist anymore. It was part of the mangled landscape. Please, again, I ask you to believe me. I wanted to stop, to crouch down. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, child, but that is not allowed. I did not crouch down. I did not speak. Instead, I watched her a while. When she was able to move, I followed her. She dropped the book. She knelt. The book thief howled. Her book was stepped on several times as the cleanup began. And although orders were given only to clear the mess of concrete, the girl's most precious item was thrown aboard a garbage truck, at which point I was compelled. I climbed aboard and took it in my hand, not realizing that I would keep it and view it several thousand times over the years. I would watch the places where we intersect and marvel at what the girl saw and how she survived. This is the best I can do. Watch it fall into line with everything else I spectated during that time. When I recollect her, I see a long list of colors. But it's the 3 in which I saw her in the flesh that resonate the most. Sometimes I manage to float above those 3 moments. I hang suspended until a septic truth bleeds towards clarity. That's when I see them formulate. Red, white, black. They fall on top of each other. The scribbled signature black onto the blinding global white onto the thick, soupy red. Yes, often I am reminded of her, and in one of my vast array of pockets I have kept her story to retell. It is one of the small legion I carry, each one extraordinary in its own right. Each one an attempt, an immense leap of an attempt to prove to me that you and your human existence are worth it. Here it is, one of a handful. The Book Thief. If you feel like it, come with me. I will tell you a story. I'll show you something. Well, that's the end of the prologue. That's the end of reading 1. We are done. But we still haven't answered. Who is the narrator? It's not a person. We know it's not a person. We know it's someone who has like this supernatural control of time. What, Jade? I'm going to tell you who it is, so I'm going to kind of spoil it, but we need to know. The narrator of this book is Death.
Yep.
I knew it. I knew it.
You knew it, Will? You knew it?
Why did you say it, Will?
So, yes, Camden?
I knew it because I said Grim Reaper.
You what?
I knew it because I said Grim Reaper.
Good. That's a good guess. Good. Camden said the Grim Reaper. So that's one version of Death. So our story is told by Death. So because this story is told by Death, which is definitely an unusual narrator, but he is going to have a lot more control over what he can tell because he is this supernatural thing. He's not even a person. And so the story that he tells is going to have a lot of freedom in it and a lot more information than like if just a normal person told this story. But that's reading number 1. That's all of our notes for page 2.